The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Global Business with Mahesh Joshi. Today we have a very interesting and a pertinent topic for current times to discuss, which none of us can afford to ignore. The future of human worker. Now I have with me for discussion today Gaurav Rastogi, a transformational leader, an inventor, an author, and a public speaker. And above all, he is an expert on future of work and human worker. He understands the requirements of work as well as the role of spirituality to keep an intense focus on getting the work done in today's extremely distracting environment. Gaurav is CEO of future of work startup, DoLoop, and he started that after a long career in driving sales transformation for $8 billion software services company. He is a master's in business. He has MBA from India's #1 program from IIM Ahmedabad. He has authored 2 business books, and he is also a co-founder of a nonprofit, Mantra Chakra Foundation, where he promotes healthy living through meditation and yoga. He's also a meditation teacher with advanced yoga credentials, and he has also authored one meditation ebook and podcast on meditation called Living Meditations. That's available on iTunes and everywhere else. So he is extremely qualified to give us a good talk and have a nice discussion today on our favorite subject, the future of human worker. By the way, he also believes that future of work is going to be very different from the monolithic corporate model that we are very familiar with in current times, where companies are having large corporate structure. That will change, and the companies will tap into distributed workforces that are shared with other companies, and that as an employee will mix work and learning in quick cycles. Welcome, Gaurav.
Thank you, Mahesh. I'm happy to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah. Gaurav, before we start our discussion, I want to share some findings which I had doing research on few things related to future of work. I found one study which says the adaptation of the currently demonstrated automation technologies could affect up to 50% of the world economy. 1.2 billion employees actually. And in terms of wages, it could impact almost $14.6 trillion. All of those look like big numbers. But if you look at where the max impact would come, the 4 countries, China, India, Japan, and the United States, they will account for over half of this. So it looks like the future of human worker is going to change dramatically in future, with machine intelligence coming in and artificial or augmented intelligence coming in. And I also saw a report from Oxford Martin School, which they did in 2013. Their estimation is that 47% of jobs in US could be susceptible to computerization in the next 20 years. Similarly, McKinsey Global Institute, they have predicted that robots will play a major role, and they could jeopardize between 40 to 70 million jobs in next 10 years. And the platform Upwork, where you can use freelancers to get things done, that alone currently is having 10 million freelancers, which are registered across 180 countries. So basically, Gara, what we are hearing nowadays is automation, drones, robots, artificial intelligence, machine intelligence. What do you see as the future of human worker in this situation?
Mahesh, that's an interesting question. And there's a lot of talk about what automation and AI will do and what jobs will take away and so on. There's a lot of talk about what technology will do. But the real question out there is, what will the human workers do? And there's hope that we'll do different things, we'll work in a different sort of environment. But what will that be? What will we all do when computers are doing a lot of the basic work and automation and robots are taking care of some of the more basic pieces of work? Let me set out a few paradoxical things that we're already beginning to see that are both at work. Both ends of the paradoxes are at work. If you look at how careers are, it used to be that becoming a lifetime employee of a company was quite the thing to do. And now, as the need for high skills becomes more important, it's often not an advantage to stay long enough in the same company because you're not going to be exposed to the newer technologies that might be elsewhere in the job market. So careers, long careers and short careers, are both seen as good to have. Same with tasks. There are micro tasks and macro tasks. There are little things like what TaskRabbit might do, which is deliver something from store to house. Might be a kind of task that people are doing. And then there's the macro tasks of figuring out how to send people to Mars, which is a super long-term program. Same with companies. Companies, the corporate structure itself, the fully vertically integrated, fully globally integrated company is one type of corporate model. But more and more, we're seeing the rise of virtual corporation, where Apple, for example, doesn't manufacture any of the stuff that they sell. They merely design it, market it, and that's the way they're set up. And more companies will become more and more virtualized as the need for higher skills becomes more urgent than it has been in the past. Same with employee learning. The comparison in my mind is the need to know the entire encyclopedia versus the need to understand a single tweet. And those are both levels of learning that we'll have to get used to. Then you look at human interactions, from zero-touch type interactions to extremely high-touch interactions. And finally, to skills, having minimal or no skills required for some kind of jobs and extremely exceptionally high skills required for some other jobs. These are all changes that are happening to things that were stable for a fairly long term in the corporate setup. And these changes are going to drive how we work and the kind of work environment that we adapt or we move to in the future. Interestingly, there's a sort of master-slave dynamic that's always at work in driving human culture with respect to us humans and our technologies. Now, you could think of fire as a technology to actually digest food outside the body. You could think of language as a way of coordinating efforts across people. And both fire and language have shaped us as modern human beings. But there's other technology. You could look at money, the creation of money, which is absolutely an absurd concept because you're trading something valuable for something which is essentially a piece of paper or now just electronic bits and bytes. So money itself is a new technology that changed the shape and culture of our civilization. So did railways, so did electricity, and now digital, and coming soon, AI, artificial intelligence. All of these technologies, we are co-evolving with these technologies all the time. And sometimes it's hard to say if we're the masters of our technology or these technologies are our master. I'll give you a simple something to think about. Facebook's valuation per user is about $200 per user. Now, the question is, do you own Facebook as a user, or does Facebook own you if they're worth $200 per user?
Right.
That's a big question. What's unmistakable is that the human and artificial intelligence or software or robot relationship, it's creating massive changes to our society, and one we'll have to adjust to rapidly until this relationship stabilizes. With previous technologies, we had, lifetimes, generations, decades or years to respond, but now we have less than a decade to adjust some of these changes in technology, and that's going to be the tricky part.
Yeah, and if you see even ILO, International Labour Organization, they are also worried about what's going to happen, what impact it will have on the society. Exactly the way you put it up, that master-slave dynamics there, and I think they're already planning their centenary initiative in 2019, which is more towards understanding and responding in the best possible manner about how the work is going to happen with the changes happening all across, and what would be the social impact, and how they can ensure a social justice in that environment. And somewhere I had seen that in the past, the work-life balance, the way it was, I think it was the three boxes of life when Dick Bowles authored the book. He said that you study, then you work, and then you retire. And now with the speed of change and the dynamics there, probably everybody will be learning, working, and enjoying the retirement. I won't call retirement the leisure, throughout our lives. And it'll go on for a long time.
Oh, absolutely. My own sense is that the model where you could consume a lifetime worth of learning in the first few years of your life, and for the rest of your life you're drawing down on that repository or that collection of knowledge, that model is completely is gone. Now you have to work and learn and work and learn, and that actually changes things a lot, because most of us, when we started work, we expected to work till the end of our working life and retire subsequently. That's not useful anymore, because after 5 years of working, our knowledge is going to be outdated. What we know is no longer going to be current. And we'll have to evolve as individuals, as well as companies and as societies, how to create these mechanisms for people to continue their education, continue their learning, and continuing to refresh their skill set, because things are moving so fast.
Right, otherwise you get obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise you get obsolete, and you're no longer able to reconnect back into the workforce if you stay out and you're now no longer current with whatever is the latest in your field. Then reconnecting is that much more difficult. Every year you stay out, you're probably 5 years behind. So keeping in the game is going to be important, which actually creates a lot more pressure on individuals to stay current on their skill game, and companies and societies will have to adjust to that.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point, because see, if you look, let's look back. A radiologist, he was in so much of demand. It was special art. Now, not art or science, whatever, the mix of both. Now, if you're reading an X-ray, a software can do twice as good as a seasoned radiologist. And somebody was expert in typing. Now you have voice recognition, and that can type maybe 3 times faster than what you could do. So things are changing. Actually, what it looks like, Gaurav, is there will be major impacts. One would be on the personal side, that why we work, how do we work, and how our career progresses. The second is organizational impact, where how the organization would look like, what would be the role of people, what would be the role of the machines, and how would the organization set it up. And the third one is it's going to impact the society. What kind of education, what kind of skill development, what would be the impact on wages, immigration, work standards, the whole economic problems of inequality, unemployment, all will come into play in a very different manner, because a human society has planned how to eradicate poverty, what needs to be done, create jobs. But here, the machines can eliminate some of those jobs. Gaurav, we're going to take a short break now, and we will continue our discussion after the break.
From the boardroom to you, Voice America Business Network. Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business.
Welcome back. You're listening to Global Business with Mahesh Joshi. We are in a very interesting discussion with Gaurav Rastogi about future of human worker. Gaurav, let's continue where we were before the break, that how the environment is changing and how the triple impact is going to come on the person, on the personal side, on the organizational impact, and also how it's going to impact the society.
Sure. I'm reminded of this poem by the Indian British Nobel laureate Rudyard Kipling, and this is the poem "Kif." If this was written about more than 100 years ago. It's a brilliant poem and a great way actually to understand how East and West can come together to create wonderful art, poetry, science, and philosophy. The first couple of lines are simply, "If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs." And that's going to be the big challenge for us as human beings and as leaders of companies, which is how do we keep our heads as all about us are losing theirs?
That's very well said, because it's such a dynamic organization, dynamic environment, which is constantly changing. It's changing at a very fast pace.
Yeah, and also there are no rules. The rules we grew up with, the rules we understood very well about how businesses run, how companies are run, how even countries or politics are run. All those rules are changing. And so if we keep going back to rules that we knew worked only a few years ago, they're useless now, which means there are no benchmarks to compare with, no rules of thumb to go back to, no notes you've snippeted away earlier that you can use. You have to learn to live in the present moment, and you have to learn to engage with the present moment on its own terms, with no reference to rules that may have been relevant only a few years ago. So when you look at what a human worker needs to do, what we need to look at, I think of them as four distinct things that we'll need to become really good at. The first thing is learning itself. The second is mastery, and not just a collection of information or knowledge. The third is connecting, and the fourth is pivoting. Let me tell you what I have in mind. Learning is super important to becoming to staying relevant in today's workplace. And this is learning by doing and not learning by reading. This is not reading about AI and thinking that you've understood it. If you're interested in artificial intelligence, then you have to dabble in it. You have to mess around with it. You have to hack around with that technology to learn to understand what it's about and to build your own intuition with it. So you have to learn by making mistakes, and you have to find a place where you can make mistakes and continue to learn. If you only have one shot and you can't make a mistake, you're not going to be fluent in that particular aspect. So being available to making mistakes and learning from mistakes. All learning is failing, and you have to fail and then learn from those and keep moving, and that's how it is. So if you go back to Steve Jobs' famous connect the dots talk, right? Forget the linear storytelling. Forget that if I do X plus Y, you get Z. You have to figure out, you have to be open to the changes that the environment is presenting to you, and learn to go with the flow. So learning is number one. Next is mastery. There are a couple of things in mastery. One is mastery of yourself, which is knowing your own spiritual, emotional, and physical center. Mastery of the art of telling your own story. Mastery of the art of changing your own story as times change and the environment changes. Mastery of your own ability to hold your attention and master your moods. Mastery of how to embody your learning, which is, a lot of our learning is in the head. When we're using our head, we're usually when we're learning, a lot of times when we're initially learning, we're using our head. But when we're actually doing those things, we have to let the head get out of the way and let our intuition and our heart, our entire body take charge, which means don't be in the head all the time. And so you use your head to learn and then work with your entire body, your entire being, and not just stay in the head. And most of us as knowledge workers, we think that we need to stay in our heads, but that's really, it comes in the way of getting things done, because we're not relying on the deeper pool of energy and deeper pool of intelligence that we have inside us. So that's mastery of your own self. The next is mastery of
sorry to interrupt you, Gaurav, but this is very important topic you triggered now. Mastering yourself. That's the toughest part, because normally human mind tries to look at the path of least resistance. More into the repetitive, easy task where you get a sense of accomplishment. I did something. And to discipline yourself, mastering yourself, especially on the emotional and spiritual side, it's a little bit difficult. You have to really get focused on it. And I think on the learning and mastering side, what you said, I think that will be the key to success for human workers, because you can't stop learning in such a fast-changing environment, and then be in control of yourself. When you say mastering yourself, you say you're mastered, so you're in control of yourself. Use what you have learned and constantly keep learning to remain kind of valid for the current situation. Otherwise, you will become irrelevant.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that point up, because I feel our education system is failing us and will fail us even more to prepare us for what we need to really do. We're trained to be, to overemphasize on our intellect. We're trained to not really pay attention to our bodies, to our emotional state, to our spiritual side, and because of that, we have a poor understanding of our own selves, and we spend our life looking for things outside, looking for fulfillment outside, and don't find it. And that education is extremely important now, because everything that we could do by becoming, better at computation or more physically capable, all those things a computer can do easily, right? But the other stuff, is what we can do uniquely, but what we are not being trained to learn, to understand, and to use to bring completely to everything we do. So our education system really does not enable us to be better humans. It enables us to be more computer-like or more machine-like, which isn't going to be really helpful as times change.
True.
Yeah. So on mastery, the next level of mastery is mastery of relationships, and which will help us being able to connect. Now, with relationships, it's really about learning empathy. What I mean by that is a lot of the work that humans will be asked to do or will be expected to do is work with other humans to carry people along, to move people to do what they need to do. And to do that, you need to know what other people care for. You need to be able to frame things in a way that helps other people see your story. And you need to be able to understand how to influence other people, not just with words, but with a far wider range of capabilities than simply writing something up and expecting people to follow through. Which, with your and my careers in corporate world, we know that just sending an email, for example, doesn't get things done. You still have to engage people.
Right. That's a
And
distribution of work by sending an email. You distributed it.
yeah, and I mean, by this time we've all realized that just telling people what to do doesn't get it done. You still have to, to move people. You still have to excite them about your cause. You still have to influence them directly and indirectly. Those are skills that we will need more and more of, and those are skills that we need to master. So that's the next thing, which is learning and mastery. After that, third skill is connecting with ourselves. We talked about that. Connecting with other humans, connecting with companies, and connecting with technologies. That will become an important skill for us as well. And finally, it's the ability to pivot. And what I mean by that is, how do we lean into the change? How do we resist change to the extent we feel like we need to resist, but be willing to change at all? How do we embrace change? How do we continue to pivot and tell a new story every time something changes, and be able to take advantage of the changing winds all around us? So the ability to pivot will be an extremely important ability. If we hold on to firm dogma, or to beliefs that we don't want to have questioned, then we're going to be extremely unhappy as times change, and that's no way to work. So let me go back to something that we talked about earlier, which is the master-slave dynamic between us and our technology. The thing is, it's convenient to believe that we are the masters of our technology, and that we can go wherever we want to, we can do whatever we want. But it's not really true. Even today, as we speak, in many ways, algorithms and technologies are telling us what to read, what to eat, what to wear, what to do. When you look at people who are working on microtasks, they are being dispatched pieces of work. For example, an Uber driver is told where to go, who to pick up, where to drop them, and then what to do next. So work is being handed over to us by technology. So the question is, who's the master and who's the slave?
That's a very good point.
Yeah. And to be masters, we have to be able to use technology at our will and not be used by it. And that's where I feel a background in yoga, not just the posture yoga, but the deeper, the ancient philosophy and practice of yoga comes in handy. I'll give you an anecdote from my childhood in India. You remember growing up you and I both grew up in the same city. So you remember growing up on the streets, there are these feral cows. There are these cows roaming around the streets. They're not feral, they're not wild. They're actually owned by someone, but they're stray cows. They're just roaming around on the streets. And occasionally, the owner's son is going to come running around through the streets looking for his cows, and then round them up and take them back home. And eventually, they'll escape again, and they'll be back on the streets.
Right.
Yeah. A good cowherd takes good care of his cows, and he never lets them stray.
Good point.
Now, why that's relevant here is our attention is a little like those cows that we've let astray. They go out. I mean, we start work, and we open out the email, but then something comes up, and we open out one browser tab. Then we remember something else, and another tab opens up, and another tab, and another tab, and then somebody calls us, and then there's the WhatsApp on the phone, and there's the coffee break, and then you come back and you wonder where the heck you started from, and that's a day in the life of pretty much everyone right now. And that's because we've let our attention astray. We let our attention be stolen and taken away to anywhere they wish to take it.
That's very well said.
Yeah, and now as we work, it'll be extremely important to be able to hold on to our attention, to be able to hold on to our energy and direct it at will. So personal mastery is just like this. A good yogi, the whole the whole principle of the yoga school itself is a good yogi has mastery over his senses and does not let them stray, right? And so if you think about the dynamic between us and automation or artificial intelligence or robots or whatever, it's this. On the one hand, technology is distracting us and making our attention spans lower. And on the other hand, it is taking away jobs that require low attention spans. So see the math, right? So it's lowering our attention and it's taking those jobs away.
That's a very good point, Gaurav. Just let's please hold your thought here. We'll take a quick break and we'll continue exactly where leaving this discussion.
When it comes to business, you'll find the experts here. Voice America Business Network. Whether the market's up or down, or if you're looking to improve your portfolio, our experts are ready to talk to you. Call now. Toll free, 866-472-5790. That's 866-472-5790. Voice America Business Network.
Welcome back. You are listening to Global Business with Mahesh Joshi. We are having very interesting discussion with Gaurav about the future of human worker. Gaurav, before the break, we were talking about artificial intelligence and machine intelligence and its impact on human beings and the society. Let's discuss a little bit more on that subject.
Sure. So the way to think about it is that in the previous industrial revolution, it paid to have people work and think like machines. We like machines. We showed up at the office at a certain point of time in the day, and we worked for 8, 10, 12 hours, depending on how bad your working conditions were, and we went home. And the worker was essentially a cog in the wheel of a large industrial machine. And you can already see that doesn't work anymore. We're plugged in all the time. We're working all the time. And we're also not able to unplug all the time. And so we always have this low level of engagement with our devices, our technology. And we're never able to step away from our workplace as much as we used to earlier. But the need of this time is not for humans to be more machine-like or for companies to be much more machine-like. It's for humans to be more human-like, right? So it doesn't pay to if you think about it, how strong can an individual human being be physically? And think of how many machines you can create that are stronger than that. So it doesn't help for human beings to only look at the physical aspect of their work. How about working long hours? If you're working 8 hours and you're a certain amount of productivity, are you 50% more productive if you're working 12 hours? Are you 100% more productive if you're working 16 hours? Are you 300% more productive if you are working 24 hours? And the answer is no. Productivity is not directly correlated to the hours of work you put in. And so there is this realization that human beings are not machines.
Right.
But machines are becoming more human-like in their cognitive capability, in their strength, of course, that's always been the case, and in their ability to do to relatively simple tasks which were originally being done by human knowledge workers. It wasn't so long ago that the word computer itself referred to human beings and not computers that we know now, right? And it's the same with knowledge workers. Maybe knowledge workers will essentially be software robots in the future. The thing is, tasks that can be automated will be automated. There's nothing immoral about it. That's how these things work all the time, right? But what are human beings going to do after that? And that's where we were going back to the master-slave conversation, which is we will either be told what to do. So we will either be told to fill the last mile of connectivity between what a computer is able to do and what human beings are able to do. So go take this box out of the autonomous truck and deliver it at the doorstep because the drone technology hasn't figured that out yet. So we can either be slaves to the technology and be given micro tasks to do at the outer edge of what computers are able to do, or we become masters of technology and we're now able to use the technology like we're able to use language or fire or money.
Right.
And that's the sort of big change. So the dynamic we were discussing before the break was that unfortunately we haven't learned to live with technology and still retain control of our own senses, right? We're now being made more and more distracted. We're being connected for longer periods, and we are not able to unplug from any context long enough for our roots to regenerate, so to speak, for our thoughts to recover, or for our intuition to develop on that subject. So what happens is we are now engaged, I would say, at 15 to 20% of our capacity all the time.
Yeah, I think you bring in a very good point, Gaurav, because if you see anything repetitive, if a human being has to do efficiency over a period of time because he or she gets tired, mental as well as physical, the productivity goes down. Whereas that can be easily replaced with artificial intelligence or machine because it will keep doing it. Because it's the way it has been designed, there's no feature for getting tired.
Now, there's no fatigue built in.
Yeah, there's no fatigue. And very good point on the distractions. With so many equipment around us, so much of technology, constant bombardment of information. Just share with you that the chief analyst at Base, a knowledge economy research firm, they have found that information overload costs the U.S. economy close to almost $1 trillion. The number they're saying is around 900 billion per year in lowered employee productivity and reduced innovation. They're constantly distracted. Emails and the messages and all the electronic media around you. And also, it actually is 25% of a knowledge worker's day. And that's what is lost. And nowadays, there's another statistics I found that workers are spending up to 50% of their time just managing the information. So what they're calling it is a national attention deficit, and the bombardment of information which is coming, it has become a norm. And the number of messages you get, the text messages, the emails, and all, it's unbelievably high. And you can say that work has become dynamic, it's disruptive, and kind of overwhelming. And those relentless messages which are coming because of the technologies, you have instant connections, is very overwhelming. Just to share a few more pieces of information with you, which I found very interesting, is almost 2 decades ago, a cognitive reorientation study was done, and it said that the constant interruptions increase the time required to do complex tasks by as much as 20 to 40%. The mental capacity is reduced. And also, a study was conducted by HP. They reported that IQ scores of information workers tested, while they are subjected to distraction and overload, the IQ was reduced by 10 points. So it's very overwhelming environment. So here's my question to you, and I would love to pick up your insight with your background and the knowledge you possess in many different fields. Uh, we all read about the corporate athletes 2 decades ago, that to be successful, you need corporate athlete. A lot of features you need in you to become that. Now, for future, would you need a corporate athlete, or you will have to become a corporate yogi?
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting article you point to. This came about almost 2 decades ago, and it had a big impact on me as well last day. It framed my thinking for a good part of my working career. But as a practicing yogi and as a corporate person, I can tell you that the model is right, except it begins at the wrong end. So let me just, for those who aren't aware, it's a pyramid. It begins with building physical capacity, then building emotional capacity, then building mental capacity, and then building spiritual capacity. And in many ways, it's kind of the Maslow's need hierarchy as well, where self actualization and self realization are at the top end of the pyramid. So it's a similar kind of pyramid. The problem with that pyramid mindset is that it assumes that you have to begin at the bottom and work your way to the top. But think about what's at the bottom: physical capacity and mental capacity. And think about what are the things that are actually being automated or outsourced to a machine. And it's these things,
Right.
right?
That's a great point.
And so you're never going to get there because you're never going to have a strong enough base over here. The thing is, the corporate yogi position is that you have to start with your building your spiritual capacity and your spiritual genius, beginning with your own self and centering and grounding yourself in your own spiritual being is core to operating in the modern workplace. You have to find your sources of motivation. You have to find your sources of determination and endurance. You have to tap into a deep pool of energy and purpose. And once you have that, then you can use that energy to direct your mental capacity, to grow your emotional, to give you emotional resilience, and of course the physical capacity needed to move up from your desk and move about. So the thing is, the corporate athlete point of view is right, except it leads people to assume that the spiritual thing comes in the end.
Right.
But the belief, my belief now is that it's what you begin with. It's not what you end with, which is you have to begin with spiritual capacity and build your spiritual genius.
I agree with you. I think
else.
that's a major change. Gaurav, we are having very interesting discussion on this subject. We will continue this discussion. Do you need to be a corporate yogi or a corporate athlete in future? Let's take a short break. We'll continue after the break.
Voice America Business Network, the bottom line in business. Up-to-date business and financial news. Call now and get the financial information you need. 866-472-5790. 866-472-5790. The experts are here. Voice America Business Network.
Welcome back. You are listening to Global Business with Mahesh Joshi. Very interesting discussions we are having today with Gaurav Rastogi on what's the future of work. And more importantly, what's the future of human worker? Welcome back, Gaurav. We were discussing about what do we need to be now, a corporate yogi or a corporate athlete?
Thanks, Mahesh. Uh, a corporate athlete that doesn't begin from the spiritual side is just an athlete. A corporate yogi can be a great corporate athlete. The thinking is that you have to begin with your own spiritual growth, your own spiritual development, and founding yourself in your own spiritual depth.
And because
And once,
it's not that we may be left with many choices, because the environment has forced us to move in that direction because of the constant distractions, the technology is pushing and taking away the enduring repetitive tasks away from us.
yeah, and again, we were talking about the theme of co-evolution with our technologies earlier, and this is a great example of co-evolution, which is as our technology becomes more sophisticated, we have to learn to handle it, and we have to learn to grow in tune with it. For example, language and reading things. When you and I look at a book, we can read it outright without having to think about the act of reading, right? But it's not innate in us. It's not as if we are born with English alphabets in our brain. We are trained up on them. We learn how to read words. We learn how to read characters, then words, then sentences, then paragraphs, then books, and then we acquire fluency in. And of course, we learn how to talk also. So these things are things that we can learn. It's the same with technology in the modern age, which is today's technology is computer technology and artificial intelligence and machine intelligence and automation. We have to learn to live with them, which means we have to evolve ourselves and our social systems to be in sync with to allow us to use these to our will.
Hmm.
And that because digital technology is moving so fast, these changes are coming at us at a much faster pace than they used to before. But it's the same dynamic. We have to learn and we have to evolve our society in line with these technologies. Otherwise, it'll be like playing with fire. If you play with fire and you don't know how to, then you'll burn the house down. But if you don't play with fire, you don't learn how to cook. And if you don't learn how to cook, you're eating raw food, which means, you don't have enough energy for to send glucose to the brain, that sort of stuff. So human beings evolved with fire.
Hmm.
Human beings will evolve with this new technology as well. It might be social evolution, but we'll just have to learn fast enough. And to come back to what I was saying earlier, and that evolution, those skills are really building our spiritual genius, being able to center ourselves in our own spirit and being able to influence other people by connecting to their hearts and not just their heads or their hands.
That makes a lot of sense. So basically, I would say, as you had earlier also pointed out, if you need to become a corporate yogi instead of a corporate athlete to be successful, I'm saying you need to be the order of how you train yourself has changed. What's the starting point with a corporate yogi versus a corporate athlete? The key may lie in how the society gets prepared for that, how a human being gets prepared, especially the next generation, what they should be learning in school. And would they be opening up their innovative, creative sides, or would they be going through those repetitive things to get trained and become an expert through education?
Absolutely, and I wouldn't kick it down to the next generation. I think our generation, we have to evolve as well. We have to learn this because it's happening in real time. It's
Yeah,
not something we're seeing far in the future. It's already here.
yeah. You're absolutely right. I think the current generation will have a major impact because things are changing and you have to work and constantly learn along with that to stay relevant. Whereas the next generation can spend time to get trained on it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, as people who are working today, we
Mhm.
have to learn to let go of habits we've had. We have to learn to create new habits, create new rituals, and create new ways to check in with our own selves and make sure that we're connected to ourselves spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. And that's the mastery of the self, which precedes mastery over anything else. If we don't have control over ourselves, if we are not able to exercise our free will on our own selves, then what are the chances that we will be able to be masters of our technology?
Right. I think this is excellent discussion, Gaurav, and I'm kind of getting convinced that the the emotional capabilities have to come into play starting from spiritual and develop that part of the brain and build the mental capacity. The overall impact of the future of work, the way it is changing, to me, it looks like there is definitely a direct impact, a major one, personal one, on people. How they work, where they work, what do they do, how do they do, what they have learned, how do they stay relevant. Second, it will have an impact on the society because individuals are impacted and how they behave in the society, how it turns the behaviors of societies, economic as well as personal dealings. And it looks like the organizations definitely are going to change. And that you can see with uh, the startup concept where a lot of creativity is coming in and people are using tasks accomplished at many different places and combined at all across the globe in one location for a successful business. You don't need to own everything. Those startups, at least in US, in terms of economic gains, have created net positive jobs in last 30 years, whereas the conventional industrial economy companies, large corporations, probably has not created that kind of employment. That's pretty evident. And the last one, which looks like how do we get ready, how do we progress in this society, that I probably would say that it'll be more important for us to start behaving like a corporate yogi and become a good corporate athlete also, but you can't start with becoming a corporate athlete and be successful. You will have to start with being picking up the traits of becoming a corporate yogi. So, Gaurav, thank you so much. We are at the end of our program. Really appreciate very insightful discussion, and you gave us a view of the future and how a human should get ready for working in future in the environment where there are lots of distractions and very difficult to focus.
Absolutely. I'm optimistic about the future. Once again, we'll have an opportunity for all humans to be less machine-like and more human-like and actually live more fulfilling, more prosperous, and more satisfying life. We have to learn to be human again. And that's a great future to look forward to.
That's very well said, Gaurav. And with that, we come to our end of our program today. Thank you so much.
I've enjoyed this. Thank you very much, Mahesh.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program brought to you on the Voice America Business Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericabusiness.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the hosts or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.